Good afternoon, I'm Earl Reagan, and this is Camping Indiana Online, coming to you from my kitchen instead of being outdoors like normal. And today we're going to present the most important video that we've done so far. It's about safety for children, and it's about safety around wildlife. And those two subjects are the most important things you can learn from Camping Indiana, because of the importance of keeping kids safe. And I'm going to tell you, when I was a kid, I went camping with my parents in East Tennessee when I was 5 years old. It was at Douglas Lake, and Douglas Lake was still wild and primitive and free. And we had to take a Jeep in there, and we were camped around black bears, bobcats, coyotes, rattlesnakes, and copperheads. And were my parents worried about me at 5 years old? Nope, not at all. Because my dad had raised me knowing all the safety rules and knowing what I could and couldn't do. And so being raised with that knowledge was important. And then when I grew up and I raised my own children, we took them to Yellowwood State Forest, west of Brown County, west of Nashville a little bit. Same thing. There were rattlesnakes, copperheads, all kinds of stuff there. Was I worried about my kids? Nope, not at all, because I had taught them the same things I learned as a child. And so keeping children safe is critically important. And children, despite what you might think, can learn the basics, even if they're only 4 or 5 years old, or even 3 years old. No, they don't need to know everything and the whys of this and the hows of that. But saying kids can't learn, I've had people in the forum say, well, I can't teach my 5-year-old, he's too young, which I disagree with, and I'm going to explain to you why and what you can do about it. And so, a few years back, 2.5 years ago, there was a child bit in Brown County State Forest. Yes, she was bit on the foot by Brown County State Park. She was bit on the foot by a copperhead. It's because she was way off in the brush, wearing flip-flops. And the sad part about that was her parents were new campers, and they didn't really know any better. And so they let their child go out and go romping in the forest wearing flip-flops. And that's just asking to get bit by a copperhead, because they blend with the forest floor and you can't see them until they strike you. So unfortunately, they learned the hard way, and they probably don't camp anymore, which I think is unfortunate. And so it's kind of tragic that people have to learn that way. So people will, I'm fortunate because I grew up doing this. My parents were camping before I was even born, and they raised me knowing all the stuff. Well, you get people today that don't know all the safety rules because maybe they went out and bought a tent or bought an RV or a pop-up, and they're so excited about going camping, and they're new campers, that they don't go and learn a few basic safety rules for themselves and for their children. And so they can't teach their children because they themselves don't know it. And I am absolutely not faulting them. I'm saying that they just haven't taken the time to learn. And what's unfortunate is they don't know the need to take the time to teach their kids. And so we're going to try and undo at least some of that today. And I don't want to slow down anybody's enthusiasm for the outdoors and for camping, but I want to make sure that you are adequately prepared for going out in the woods. And whether you're going rustic and primitive and way out on the bush, or you're going in an RV, you need to learn some of these things. And that's going to keep your children safe. And that's the most important thing, is keeping your children safe. I'd say the first thing about that for everybody, both adults and children, is to be aware of your surroundings, to be focused on where you are at, and be aware of the power of nature. There's nature, and then there's us little humans. And nature can overpower us. Nature can confuse us. And so what I'm saying, I guess, is that I would much rather teach everybody. And you know, a lot of people probably already know all this stuff. And this really isn't for you. This is for the newbies and the people that are just beginning camping, or people that haven't camped, say, in a long time and may have forgot this or that. But I would rather teach you guys this than a child get hurt. And the need to teach the children is the most important thing you can do. It's more important than fire building. It's more important than cooking. It's more important than anything, because it is your children. And so I would prefer to teach the adults, and you can get your kids and your nieces and nephews and your grandchildren and everybody else around to watch this video, so that we can all learn together. So you guys can learn from me. I'm passing along 61 years of my experience, and I've had a lot of people compliment me on, you know, say, building fires or putting tarps up or any of the other videos I've done. And this is, like I said, the most important video. You can't teach your children, well, you don't want to try to teach your children all the wheres and whys of everything. You want to teach them the very basic things. And I don't remember how my parents taught me. I do remember how I taught my children, and it wasn't like a formal process of taking them around the campgrounds and saying, you know, this is this and this is that, and you have to learn this, you have to do that. It was more a process of indoctrinating them, like starting them in the campsite and then moving out a little bit further into the woods, and then teaching them what they needed to know. And some of the basic stuff you need to teach your children, I think probably one of the most important things is keep your hands and your feet where you can see them. Absolutely never reach into a pile of brush to grab sticks or kindling. Never put your feet into a crevice where you can't see them, or step over a log, which we'll get to a little bit later. And that's probably the most important thing, because that transfers from the actual campsite itself out to into going down the trails and that sort of thing. So you have to teach your children to keep their hands and feet where you can see them. If you can't see your hand because it's in a brush pile, or you can't see your foot because it's underneath a log, that's bad, and you're going to get in trouble. So I think the second thing that you need to teach your children is to stay on trails. Stay in the areas that are prepared for camping and adequate for what you're doing. I'm not saying that in the future, when they get a few years on them in the campgrounds, that they can't go out and explore with you, but don't let your children just go running off into the forest, because that's when they're going to get in trouble. And unfortunately, there are a lot of children hurt camping, and that's because, like I said, the parents don't see the need to teach their kids because they don't know. And so instead of criticizing people, I'm trying to say, hey, you know, let's get this learned and let's get this figured out. So anyway, stay in the campgrounds and stay on the trails and stuff. And I know when my family went to East Tennessee, when I was a child, we had a campsite set up, and it was pretty wild. But my parents basically showed me where I was allowed to go, and it wasn't that big of an area. It was, I don't know, maybe 50 feet by 100 feet where our tent was. And my parents told me to stay there in that area. And yeah, I knew what a bear was. Yeah, I knew what a rattlesnake was. My parents basically said, if you go outside this area, you're in danger of getting eaten or you're in danger of getting bit. Can they prepare for every single thing? Could a snake come crawling into the campsite? Absolutely. But I know what to do around snakes. So, and I will get to this later, as a child, I had already learned what you should and shouldn't do around in different situations. And it was very basic, and my dad made sure I knew all these things before we went down there. And like I said, we went to the Cumberland Gap when I was 4. I don't remember that trip. I do remember my trip to Tennessee. And the next item, and this is going to cause a few people to get mad at me, is have your children in boots. Do not let them wear flip-flops, because boots can protect your feet against snake bites. It can protect you from hot coal popping out of the fire and falling into your shoes. It can give you a lot of safety options. And without those, like I said, the girl that got bit in Brown County was way out in the brush wearing flip-flops because they didn't know any better. And it's unfortunate that that happened, but I know when we went camping, we all wore boots, both of my parents and myself. And okay, you might think it's uncomfortable, or flip-flops are a lot easier if you're just going to run outside of your tent or your RV, and a lot easier to put on, but they offer you virtually no protection. And I'll get to this in a little bit. The absolute #1 place that people are bit by snakes is on the back of the ankle. And that's with people wearing flip-flops and sandals. If you're wearing boots, they can't bite you on the back of the ankle. So it's important to wear, excuse me, it's important to have your kids wearing boots. And like I said, I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but I'd rather tell you and have you maybe a little bit upset with me than to have you learn the hard way, than to have your child bit on the foot by a snake. So that's super, super important. And the other thing I was saying, when you go camping, respect nature. When you are out in the woods, remember, you're out in an environment that's a lot bigger than you and a lot more complicated than you. And you can get yourself in trouble or get your kids in trouble because you aren't paying attention. And so you have to respect nature and its power. Its power can come in the form of bad weather. Its power can come in the form of dangerous animals. Its power can come a whole bunch of different ways, but you've got to realize that you are just a little bitty speck in this big, natural, beautiful world. And so respecting nature is #1. And if there's something you don't know, ask somebody in our forum. I mean, we've got a lot of experience in there. Get a book on a subject. I mean, I carry a field guide that is broken down well, that has all the edible plants in it, because I may miss one. So whether you are in an RV in the middle of a campgrounds, or you're in a tent way out in Hoosier National Forest, just realize that your environment is way bigger than you are. So when you take your kids out there, make sure that you follow some of these all of these safety rules. Make sure that you have boots on them. Make sure that they stay within a defined area. And yeah, your kids can learn that. It doesn't matter how old they are. Your children can learn this. Kids actually learn better than adults. They're like sponges because their little brains are growing and they have more ability to absorb information than you do at your age. No matter what your age is, your brain loses that capability as you get older. So children can absolutely learn these things. And again, I am not criticizing anybody because there's a lot of you that don't know these things. And so I'm trying to help you learn to keep your kids safe. And so let's go over the 3 basic safety rules again. Keep your children close to the campsite where you can see them. You don't have to follow them everywhere. You don't have to watch them 24/7, but make sure they are staying within their campsite area. And if you want, you can give them consequences for not doing so, like they have to sit at the picnic table for half an hour. It's kind of like being grounded. It's being camped. Keep boots on them. And for goodness sakes, keep your hands and keep your feet where you can see them. And that's probably the most important thing, because when you put your hands or your feet where you can't see them is generally where there's snakes or any other wildlife that you don't want to mess with. And so that's pretty important right there. And yeah, kids can understand this. Kids can get this. So I'm trying to get everybody to kind of get on the same page here and go with the safety rules. And you know what? You may not ever experience anything, but God help you if you do. And that's what I'm saying. It's to be on the safe side. You want to make sure your children know and understand all these things. So we're going to move along to the next subject here pretty soon, and then we'll talk to you in a minute. Alrighty, we're back for the second part of this video, and this is safety around wildlife. And this is important for yourself and for your kids. It's important for everybody. And it doesn't matter whether you're in an RV, it doesn't matter if you're in a tent, it doesn't matter. It's important because these are for everybody. If you remember last year, there was a tourist in South Dakota that got off a motorcycle and went up and tried to pat a baby buffalo. And she almost got killed. The buffalo gored her, tore her pants off, which everybody thought was pretty funny. I thought the whole thing was tragic because the lady didn't know any better. And so that's what can happen. And luckily we don't have wild buffalo in Indiana. We don't have bears in Indiana. We don't have alligators in Indiana. We don't have scorpions in Indiana. So we're really lucky that we've got only a few things that can be a problem. But we're going to talk about them today. And remember, these are general guidelines. These aren't, you can't prepare, I can't prepare you for everything, but I can at least try and give you the general ideas. And so that woman almost got killed because she didn't know any better, and she did something that wasn't real smart. But she didn't know that it wasn't real smart until the thing nearly killed her. So we are going to talk about all the different animals that you might encounter in the state of Indiana and what to do with them. We're going to start with the easy ones and then get to the more complicated ones. We're going to start off with possums. Possums are very docile. They are, yeah, maybe they're a little ugly. They stay away from people unless there's trash. And it's another good reason to pick your trash up constantly. They'll feed on trash, and they will only get aggressive if they're cornered. But the neat thing about possums, they eat ticks. Thousands of ticks. That's a possum's favorite food. So don't try and scare possums off because they're eating ticks that would otherwise jump on you or on your dog. So just leave them be. Give them a wide berth and you're all fine. Possums aren't that difficult. Skunks. basically the same as possums. You don't really see them very often, but I don't have to remind you what a skunk can do to you. But they will only do that if they're cornered. They will only do that if you back them into a situation where they have no way to get out or escape. Then they'll spray you. So skunks are the same as possums. Just leave them alone. Don't mess with them. They come wandering through. Skunks are actually kind of funny. They've got pretty funny little personalities. But again, give them space. Don't bother them. Don't back them into a corner. That's the worst thing you can do to a skunk. So they're pretty easy to deal with. Next, bobcats. Bobcats are very elusive. I've been camping in Indiana my entire life, and I have never seen a live one. I know they're here. I know there's a fair amount of them, but they keep themselves hidden, especially during the daytime. And so if you do run into a bobcat, say one's cornered or it's trapped or caught in a trap, what you need to do with bobcats is to make yourself as big as possible. I mean, go like that, make a whole bunch of noise, and they will leave you alone. They're very, very shy, and they will not, like I said, I've camped in Indiana my entire life. I've been camping here hundreds and hundreds of times. I've never seen one. So they're very, very, if you do see one, consider yourself fortunate, because they just don't make themselves known, which is really interesting because I've seen the numbers in the publications for how many bobcats there are here, and there's a lot of them. It's just they keep themselves hid. So the one thing you don't do if you run into a bobcat is to turn your back and run. They will come after you because to them you look like any other woodland creature trying to get away, and they will cause you a lot of trouble. So don't turn your backs on them. Stand your ground, make a lot of noise, make yourself as big as possible, and they'll leave you alone. Unless they have babies. If they have babies, you're in trouble because they will protect their young to, they'll protect their young to the death, and they will mess you up. And so I would make sure they don't have whelp. Just don't worry about bobcats because you generally won't see them. Coyotes. Coyotes, there's a lot of coyotes in Indiana. You generally won't see them for the same reason. They're nocturnal. They make themselves very scarce. They stay away from mankind as much as possible. And you know, coyotes aren't a whole lot different than your family dog. They're fairly smart. They're organized in packs. But whereas bobcats are just solitary off on their own, coyotes, on the other hand, are in packs, and they will only come near humans if they're really hungry. If they're not really super hungry, they won't bother you, and they will bother you if they have babies. Again, it's the same thing as the buffalo in South Dakota. You need to respect them, and with bobcats, as with bobcats, you basically do the same thing. You make as much noise as possible. You make yourself big, you wave your arms in the air, you jump up and down and yell, and they will leave you alone. Again, I've been in Indiana my entire life, and I've only seen coyotes maybe once, maybe twice at the most. And they were way off in the distance. They didn't get anywhere near us because they were more scared of them than we were, us than we were of them. So make sure that you keep them, like I said, they won't bother you generally. But if they do bother you, like if they're hungry or they smell really good food and they want to come in, just make yourself large. And those are, you know, those are really pretty easy. You don't really have to worry about them here in Indiana. We're going to get on to a couple more things here. Raccoons. Raccoons are dangerous because they are very, very smart. They can learn, and they aren't afraid of humans. They have lost their fear of mankind, and they will come into your campsite, they will come into your RV, they will come into your tent, they will open coolers, they will open food bags. And I know all you are laughing right now, but there's some reasons that we don't want to mess with raccoons. First things first, never ever take food into your tent. I don't care if it's a midnight snack or what it is, that's inviting raccoons into your tent. And if you're in an RV, make sure that the door is latched when you close it. I know some people that were over in Brown County, and the whole family had walked down to the restrooms and stopped and chatted with some of their friends, and they came back and there was like 10 raccoons inside their RV. And the raccoons were in the process of ransacking it, and they were eating the food, they were getting off. And these people's RV was pretty badly damaged because of 10 raccoons in there. And so you make sure your door is latched when you leave, or when you go in for the night. Double check your door, make sure it's latched. And the one thing that I think everybody needs to realize about raccoons can carry rabies. And I've heard of people who thought they were going to have some fun. They were sitting around the fire. Coons came up and they wanted to try and hand feed raccoons. So they were down, trying to hand raccoons food. And what happened? They got bit on the hand. So what do you think happened after that? That person had to go to the hospital and get very painful rabies shots. It's not worth it. If you just have to feed the raccoons, throw the stuff way out on the edge of your campsite. However, you got to realize something. In Indiana, feeding raccoons at a state property is against the law. Generally, human food's not good for raccoons. You're going to probably make them sick. And so, don't give raccoons food. Period. End of subject. I've known people that have given them all kinds of things. They've thrown hot dogs at them. They've thrown marshmallows at them. Raccoons love sweet stuff. So, that's super, super important because you don't want coons in your tent. You get them in your tent, they turn around to leave, they're confused, and that's bad because they will bite, they will scratch you, and I can't tell you enough. Oh, and please, don't set your cooler underneath a picnic table. I've seen so many people suggest that, and it's really not how you keep raccoons out of your coolers. You keep raccoons out of your coolers by putting the coolers inside the vehicle. Yeah, it might be a pain in the butt, and you might sit there and go, well, darn. But the only way to ensure that your food supply is safe is to put it inside your vehicle. About, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago, I was over in Brown County at Valley Branch, and my ex-wife and I had just gone to bed, and we were in a real primitive area. We were in a place called Valley Branch Retreat Center, and camped on the other side of we were off back in the way back on the creek. And one night, just as we were going to bed, I laid there and I was like, oh man, did I put the cooler away? And so I realized I hadn't put my cooler away, which is one of the few times I've ever forgotten that. And I looked out the door, and about 30 feet behind the picnic table, there were 3 raccoons. And they were just eyeballing my cooler. They were like, hey, look, he left a cooler, and it's not even locked. And so they were on their way to raiding my cooler, and I got up, and I put my pants and my shoes on, and I went out there with my flashlight. And it was kind of funny, too, because the coons were like, who, us? Oh, no, we weren't looking at your cooler. Oh, no, we're just, hi, boss. And they were pretty funny, but they all scurried back into the woods and scurried up the hillside. But the only way to guarantee you that your food is going to be safe is to put it back in your vehicle. Every night I put my food inside my truck, both my dry food and my coolers. That way I don't have to lay there and worry about it. I don't have to lay there and go, well, gosh, have coons gotten into my coolers yet? Gee, I don't know. And you look out your tent, you actually sleep better with your coolers locked inside your vehicle. So, to recap with raccoons, it's illegal to feed them. You never ever take food inside your tent. I'm constantly surprised at Camping Indiana where people are like, well, it was just a bag of Oreos or it was just a bag of Doritos, and I don't know how coons got in there. And it's kind of funny but kind of sad at the same time because it's so easy to prevent. So just keep coons out of your tent, keep food out of your tent. And deer. Deer, like at Brown County State Park, have completely lost their fear of humans. And they look at us as a food source. And again, it's illegal to feed deer because we give them things that we might think they like, but we don't really know. And their bodies aren't designed to digest whatever food it is you give them. And you can hurt them. I mean, it's real simple. It's like everybody knows if you give a dog chocolate, it can kill the dog. Well, the same thing goes with deer. Deer have kind of sensitive digestive systems, and if you give them the wrong food, you can kill them. And I'm sure nobody wants to have the deer go off into the woods and lay down and die. So it's important. A couple years ago, 2.5 years ago, we had somebody that put up a video online, and he thought it was really cute. It was his 3 kids and another child. There was a deer that had come up to a picnic table, and they were patting it. And I cannot tell you what a bad idea that is, because and the children were just stroking the deer and everything else. And a couple things about that. Deer carry deer ticks. Deer ticks carry Lyme disease. And those are the little itty bitty ticks that you almost can't see. You can die from Lyme disease, or you can be sick and it can last for years. So you need to keep away from them, because if you go up and you start stroking, you're going to have ticks jumping on you, and that's a really bad idea unless you have possums around to eat them. But no, I'm kidding. Well, possums eat deer ticks. Anyway, you need to keep the deer away. And the other thing about that is that deer, when they're startled, kick. They kick with their back legs, and there have been instances of children who have taken a deer hoof in the head, and it's generally fatal. And that's horrifying to me. And so, yeah, maybe I'm being really blunt, but I am trying to protect your kids. And so you don't want children to go up and try and pat a deer. It's just a bad idea. Now, you're asking, okay, well, a deer came into our campsite. It's not like we invited him. And our kids were at the picnic table. What do we do? Well, it's actually pretty simple. When a deer comes up to your campsite, or it comes up to your table, you put your hands out in front of you like this. You don't wave them like you do with possums, but you just hold them in front of you as a form of self-protection. You keep your eyes on the deer and you back away slowly, and that will keep you safe. The last thing you want to do is startle a deer. If you startle a deer, it will kick, it will bite, it will run you over. It will cause all kinds of problems. So, and like I said, kicking deer have caused skull fractures. Kicking deer have caused broken collarbones. Kicking deer have killed a few people. And so you just don't want to tempt fate by going up and doing that. You don't want to tempt fate with Lyme ticks jumping on you, deer ticks jumping on you. So the best thing you can do is teach your children and yourselves that when you have a deer come up to the table, put your hands up, back away slowly. And don't turn your back and run, because as soon as you do that, you'll startle them and you don't know what's going to happen. If there's multiple people around, yeah, you might get away yourself, but you might be responsible for somebody else getting kicked. So try and keep them in front of you, back away, and that's the safest thing you can do. And last but not least, snakes. I know everybody's laughing. There are venomous snakes in southern Indiana. We have the copperheads, which are all over the southern half of Indiana. We have timber rattlesnakes, which are basically Brown County, Monroe County, Lawrence County, Jackson County. There's and a few scattered pockets. They're not everywhere, but they are there. In northern Indiana, we have Massasauga or pygmy rattlesnakes. They're maybe only 18 inches long, but they are dangerous because they just lay there in the weeds, and I mean, they're not like they're waiting for everybody to come walking through and go, oh look, a human, I'm going to bite him. They'll try and get away from you. But northern Indiana has Massasaugas, and I have a friend that, gosh, it was probably 35 years ago, that got bit on the foot by one, and it messed him up for 3 months. I mean, he was down. His foot swelled up. They thought they were going to have to amputate his foot. Fortunately, they didn't. But you know what? He was wearing sandals and walking down a trail. And he got off the trail a little bit wearing those sandals, and he found a Massasauga rattlesnake. It's the same thing. If he'd been wearing boots, it wouldn't have been a problem. But he thought, well, you know, I'm just going for a 2-mile hike. I'm just going to wear my sandals because I don't feel like changing them. And he paid for it. He missed work. I mean, it was bad. So anyway, we have a few venomous snakes in Indiana. And as Patrick Halter told you in the snake video, we do not have cottonmouths in Indiana. I see so many people posting, well, I saw a cottonmouth in Shelby County, or I saw a cottonmouth in Greene County. No, you didn't. You saw probably a banded water snake. But anyway, the thing with snakes, copperheads are probably a little bit more dangerous than rattlesnakes, because rattlesnakes at least warn you. Copperheads don't. They're laying there very quietly, and you generally don't find a copperhead until you step on it. And again, that's a great reason for wearing boots. You just, if you're in an area that's known to have venomous snakes, wear boots. And now, like I touched on earlier about people getting bit on the back of the ankle, it's for 2 reasons. One, they're wearing sandals or flip-flops, and 2, when they're going down a trail and they step over a log that's fallen, snakes are usually coiled up right next to the underside of a log. So if you don't see a snake on this side of the log, there's probably one on the back side, or there may be one on the back side. And you go and you step over that log, and the snake, defending itself, bites the back of your ankle. And it's why that's the most common place for snake bites in Indiana. So look over logs. And again, never put your hands or your feet where you can't see them. If you do, you're risking getting bit. No, there's not snakes everywhere. I've been to Brown County State Park probably 100 times. I have never seen a rattlesnake there. And then I see online, you know, videos of a rattlesnake, or people saying, well, yeah, we saw one, or anything else. They're actually pretty rare. And the important thing about that is that if you do run into one, there's very definite ways to handle it. As soon as you hear a rattlesnake or you see a copperhead, you freeze. You stand absolutely perfectly still. You look around with your eyes. You don't move your head. You do everything you can to look around with your eyes, and you find the snake. And then once you see it, be patient. Wait a minute, and then very slowly back away. Do not make sudden movements, because they key off of movements. They strike based on movement. They will react to your movement. And for God's sake, never try and kick one. I'm surprised how often people that get bit had seen the snake, they reacted badly, they tried to kick it, and it bit them. I mean, people don't generally stop and think about these things, and they just react, and that's how they get bit. So just to recap a little bit here, you don't step over logs without looking. If there's a log on the ground, you lean over and you look on the back side. If it's down there, you can see it. You should be wearing boots. And if you do see a snake, you stop, look around until you determine exactly where it is. You wait a second. It'll probably lose interest in you and just crawl away. If not, like if it's cornered or it's backed up against a building or it doesn't have any means of escape, is when they are most dangerous. So when you do see one, you back away slowly until you're probably 2 times the snake's body length, and then you go ahead and turn and walk away. Snakes can only strike half to 3/4 of the length of their body. So if you see a 6-foot snake, they can only strike 3 or 4 feet. But you don't want to test it. So if you see a 6-foot snake, you stop, you look, you back away until you're about 12 or 15 feet away, and then you can go ahead and turn and walk away. And they don't chase you, they don't come after you. There's a lot of urban legends about that, and that's the urban legends generally aren't true. So to recap and to summarize everything I've been saying about wildlife, you just have to respect that you're out in their habitat. You are out in nature. And it doesn't matter if you're in a tent and you're boondocking, or you're in a RV and you're in a campground with 100 other RVs, you're going to run into these things sooner or later. And knowing how to deal with them is most important. So I'd say realizing that you're out in nature, understanding how to deal with it, keeps you safe. That's how I stayed safe when I went to Tennessee with my family when I was 5 years old. It's because I knew from the training I had received from my father what to do in case I ran into any of those things. As it turned out, we didn't. There was some bear way up on the hill late at night, and my dad went out with a gun. He didn't go out to shoot them. He went out just to defend our camp. Ended up not being a problem. But other than that, we didn't see any snakes. We didn't see any bobcats. So we didn't see anything that week, and it was great. I had a great time as a 5-year-old, and as a 5-year-old, my parents knew the few basic things that they needed to train me. So if anybody's got any questions or they want something clarified, absolutely ask within the forum. I'll be happy to answer you. We have some very experienced campers in Camping Indiana. And Camping Indiana, by the way, just passed 20,000 people, and I am very proud of that. I started Camping Indiana 10 years ago with 10 or 11 people, and there's only one person in there left, my daughter, that was there back 10 years ago. And to see it become 20,000 people and to become a important part of Indiana's camping community is really, really rewarding to me. So let's go out and camp. Let's go out and have a great time. Let's go out and have fun. But for most of all, importantly, let's stay safe. Let's keep your kids safe, keep yourselves safe, and have fun.